Talk Sports! All right, guys, it's a stormy evening in Pittsburgh. Stormy, I tell you. How is it out in Philly, Garrett?
Same thing. Keep your fingers crossed. We've been having a lot of lightning and stuff. Hope it may be a blessing rather than a curse, but maybe I'll get cut out if we have another lightning storm halfway through the show. So,
well, it's an exciting night we do have here. Gary, Mac Daddy Kin. We got Chris, Sergeant Stubby Fletcher. A war hero. Sergeant Stubby is a war hero.
Yes, indeed.
Oh, my gosh. And I'm Dave Guapo Finoli. How are you guys tonight?
how are you, Guaco?
Oh, man. I'll tell you what. I have this obsession lately as when I'm off. And it's not wanting to throw a ball at Dietrich's head after his slow home run trot. But what, have you ever watched the show Comedians in Cars?
Getting coffee, yes.
Getting coffee. I don't know what I could sit there for like 3 hours and watch this with and I can't stop myself.
The Rickles episode and the Gary Shandling episode are must-see.
Classics. I saw the Bob, what the hell was Super Dave's name?
Oh, God, I can't think of his name now. But yes.
Yeah, Super Dave. He was on last night and had me in tears. Had me in tears. Gary, it's on Netflix if you ever get the chance.
Yeah, I've heard about it. People have talked to me about it.
Yeah, it's hilarious. But we're gonna start off by talking hockey. And first off here, something that just popped up. I didn't have a chance. Maybe you guys saw it. But there's a researcher. He is the founder of the Odd, Mysterious, and Fascinating History of Pittsburgh on Facebook, which is a pretty neat group. A lot of neat things come on there. But he now has proved through articles, and we will take it to our next book on Pittsburgh first, that professional hockey birthplace is now in Pittsburgh.
Thanks for taking my segment, Dave. Really happy about
that. Well, we're not going to talk about it then.
We can talk about it. Hey.
We'll wait till then.
Nope. Go ahead.
Well, it's just a little neat thing. You could go into particulars then. I thought that was pretty cool.
It is very cool.
I had actually heard something like that, but I don't think it was ever confirmed before. But it sounds like he went back and did some research on timing and dates and some of that stuff. So
right.
If that's the case, that would be very interesting news, I think. But there had been, I think once they had built the arena out in Pittsburgh, there's some stuff and some of the history stuff that's out there in the NHL that some of those organizations threw a lot of money at some pretty famous guys, Riley Hearn in particular, a goalie.
Yeah.
So if he's confirmed it, that is interesting stuff. So.
Yeah. No, that was. But we can come back to that, Sergeant Stubby.
Not to get too bitter on my co-host.
That's okay, man. That's okay. But tonight we're going to talk a little about hockey. Man, last night, I'll tell you what, I was working late, so by the time I got home late in the second period, Boston just looked like they were kicking St. Louis's ass.
Yep.
I don't know how they're going to win a game. It could go down to 16 straight finals losses by the St. Louis Blues, which would be an incredible losing streak.
I'm not ready to go there yet. I think the Blues looked fresher, if you didn't see it. The Blues looked much more ready to go in period one. But by the time period two started, Boston had getting used to the hits back, gotten their legs back. And, they pretty much whipped them pillar to post in that last 40 minutes. So,
it was dominant.
I thought there would be some of that rust on Boston after that long layoff. And there was, like Gary said, for about a period.
Yep.
And then they just totally dominated that game. And what really opened the floodgates was a stupid penalty. And, one of the things that St. Louis has done all year is they've played a physical game. Well, that came back to haunt them last night on a couple of bad penalties. Really didn't let them get back into the game, get any kind of momentum. And it could have been worse. Boston hit 2 posts in that in the first period too.
I did.
Oh, wow. Wow.
I did.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I got home about 3 minutes left in the second, and by that point through the third, it looked like a one-team game.
I mean, Sundquist looks like a mistake now, a little bit.
Yeah.
He's played extremely well in these playoffs for them, and he's got a lot of good press. That fourth line for St. Louis had actually been playing far, far better than Boston's fourth line, but not last night. And his penalty at center ice was a dumb one, as Chris said, and it really changed the course because then Boston scored quickly, and after that it was a floodgate. So, but I'm not ready to – I don't think – I still think St. Louis will do some things here. But, when you really boil it down, to me, it comes down to this in my mind, guys. The top six forwards, they're good on both teams. I think Boston's a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
I think Bergeron's the best player on the ice. I think Marchand, love him or hate him,
hate him.
Game player.
Hate him.
Most people hate him, but he is a big game player.
Two hates here.
Yeah, I mean, nobody
doctors.
likes him.
Yeah, what is it?
He was a force boy, Dave, in the second period. He had a lot of shots. Yeah, he may be that, but I think
he's a great player.
If you match up, and then you look at the second line, although they put Backus on it for size.
Yeah.
Boston's second line with Krejci and DeBrusk is a damn good unit as well. It's got everything on it. But Char was hit with a shot late in the third, though, Dave, and he got a bad cut. And he's been a little dinged up. If he's not in there, that's a little bit of a different thing that St. Louis is looking at, as they come over the blue line. He's 100 years old, but he's still huge, and he's still the strongest guy in the league if you listen to anybody.
Yeah.
So if he can't go or he's not 100%, that could change the series a little bit, So I think Rask has been a little bit better too. I mean, Binnington gave up 5 goals twice against San Jose. They got him moving a little bit last night. He's pretty big. And I thought he was, last night they exposed him a little bit again, moving side to side. Rask is probably going to win the Conn Smythe to me if they win it. And I think that him, and I think the fact that Boston's top line is probably the best unit in the series, I think that ultimately will be the difference. But I don't think St. Louis is going to go away easy either. I mean,
I just think they look so much so superior in speed. They were physical. They were incredible with the passes. I'm not seeing the first period, so I don't see how they go much past five games, 6 at the outlet.
Well, guys, I mean, the thing that we've talked about before is it's really about matchups, isn't it? And I'm not sure this is a great matchup for St. Louis. They looked overmatched completely. I think that it's going to take a little bit of film time. I think they may want to spend a little bit of time just to look at what they were doing. There wasn't a lot of open ice for them. I mean, they got outshot, I think, the second period, something like 16-3.
Yep.
They weren't, they have to get back to playing real fundamental hockey, Same thing that was haunting the Penguins there for a while. Put the puck on the net, get traffic in front, get a goal, like get a cheapie or something like that, and then, all bets are off at that point. But the game that they played last night is not one that's going to work for them against this team.
No.
I will say, though, guys, the only counter to that, though, is every single one of these series, people said a lot of the same things. Well, they're not going to deal well with Winnipeg. Winnipeg's the biggest team in the league, and they're physical. They didn't in the early part of the series. They won the series. They got some big guys. Maroon's a big guy. Steen's a big guy. I think we talk about the Penguins' current roster. Look at 3 of those St. Louis defensemen. I mean, Pietrangelo is not necessarily a hitter, but he's 6'4" or 5. They've got some big guys on defense too. So I do think that they're going to have to go back and have to figure out something different than they showed in that last 40 minutes. But they played some big, heavy teams like Boston in these playoffs, and they've gotten through them all. San Jose and Dallas included. So Dallas has some big guys up front too, and Ben and some other guys. So. I just think Boston's just a little bit better team than those 3 teams, but I'm not ready to count them out just yet. But clearly that was an ass whipping in that last 40 minutes. No question.
What do you think about it, Fletch? You think they can come back, or you think Danny's going to cry at the end?
Well, I think that they're going to we always talk about this too. it doesn't really the series doesn't really start until someone wins on the other person's ice, and that hasn't happened yet. So let's see what happens around Game 3 time, or how the second game goes. But Gary, you brought out something interesting that we should think about too. Is you mentioned the Penguins. What does it take for the Penguins to get back into this whole conversation of a deep playoff run? I mean, we talked about size being a problem. I think there's going to be a roster shakeup. We keep hearing stories about Kessel being moved, but the defense, I think they probably need to get a little bit bigger. I think they need to get some of that speed. They didn't have the same overwhelming speed that they had the 2 Cup years this year, and that was evident against the Islanders. What do you guys think?
Well, I'll tell you what. One thing that's going to hamper them until they get rid of a big salary guy. This Kessel, Minnesota thing, that puts him in control of any trade that comes up. So that's going to hurt the Penguins in the long run. They don't have salary cap to improve much. They don't have a farm system at this point, so to speak, that is going to improve them like it did in 2015-16. I think they're pretty damn close. That window is pretty damn close to being closed. And he needs to make either one last huge push to get it through or just start the rebuild at this point. Rebuilds with a salary cap don't take as long as they used to be if you do it right.
Right.
But, right now, with the way they're configured, and until they get rid of a high salary guy, they're screwed. I see them as being a good team. I see them as being a playoff team. I just don't think they have the speed or the size at this point.
Right.
To be a Stanley Cup final contender. And until you clear out in front of the net, Murray's at their mercy. I mean, you got to be on steal a game at every given game when you have a defense like that. It reminds me of what Barrasso, who had Hall of Fame numbers, but talking Hall of Fame numbers in the mid-3s on goals against.
Yeah. Different era. Yep.
He was hung out to dry so many times by that team, and he was the perfect goalie for that kind of run and gun team.
Oh yeah, he was, and but I think those who say Fleury would make a difference, no, not with this defense in front of him.
I don't think so. Actually, I think it would be worse.
Yeah, I think it would
be worse because his style it would actually make it worse.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I
don't know what's it going to take there.
I think I think this is going to be the toughest job that Rutherford has. But a couple things I think we'll have to see. I think still big question mark. I think they did start to do the things that we had talked about on some of our podcasts in the second half. I think Rutherford had, I don't want to say necessarily come to Jesus in what I see in the league. It's funny when we're talking about the finals. Think back to 2 years ago or 3 years ago when the Penguins ran to the first one. And Dave, I was telling you when I noticed at that game here in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is always a punishing, heavy-hitting team. Penguins came in mid-March, and they completely ran by the Flyers on every shift after the first 10 minutes. You could see that the game had changed right there. They made it a speed game at open ice. They just outran you. Their conditioning was better. And they had bullets like Hagelin, guys like that kept you on your heels, so that just opened up the ice further. Now, all of a sudden, and it's funny, McGuire, Olchuk, even Emmerich, well, these teams are heavy teams. What's heavy mean? Big wingers, some skill, big defense that slows you down, a few guys that scare the hell out of you, okay? Both St. Louis and Boston are constructed that way. The Caps and Islanders are constructed that way. Winnipeg and San Jose were constructed that way. The Penguins aren't constructed that way. Now, I think they started to make the moves to see if they could do it, but there's big question marks around them all. For some reason, we seem to have a black mark on these deadline deals. As good as McCann looked, he was a bullet. He was a guy kind of like Wilson was, and not as fast as Hagelin, but he was a face first, throw it in, chase it into corner kind of guy, opens up the ice. But Bukestad struggled. He struggled a lot, and he's big. He's 6'5". Now, he's not a punishing 6'5", but he's big and he takes up a lot of space. just like Brassard, he struggled. He was better than Brassard was, but he struggled. So I like the move, but we got question marks because the second half really didn't do that much when he was here. I think he only scored 2 goals.
Right.
I think they started to make the move on defense. The first started with the Pedersen deal, which turns out might have been the steal of the year, unpublicized. We send Sprong, who couldn't get a jersey here, totally gave up on him. Another one of Sullivan's loves he finally gave up on. But we get Pedersen. He was fantastic. And he's not punishing, but he's the new kind of defenseman, much like some of the St. Louis guys. Long, 6'4", 6'5", arms out. He's punishing enough, and he's long enough to keep you from opening up the ice. So I liked what I saw of him. There's a reason why Anaheim gave up on him. Let's see if the league adjusts to him, but I liked what I saw. Trotman and Goodbranson, when they brought them up or here, both had good stretches, and they're big dudes, and they can hit. But Goodbranson's been run out of 2 or 3 different organizations because of his lack of consistency and injuries, and Trotman was in the AHL for a very long time. There's a reason. So we got to see a full season of it, but there were stretches where they looked like they were starting to make some of the moves. I mean, to me, simply, Malkin and Kessel, if they're here, have to be 10 times better. They were both.
I mean, he just was, it just seemed like he was pressing more and more, and it was getting worse as the year was going on. But
right. But I mean, they were both big minuses. You know, forwards aren't generally as big minuses as defensemen are, and they were both big minuses. I think Kessel was in the 20s. I think Malkin was too. They may not be able to keep both. Malkin probably has more market value, but I can't see him doing that. I think Kessel, if they move one, it could be Kessel. They may not need him if they can get what they expected to get out of Rust.
Yeah.
In my view. You know, I think they got a lot of decisions to make on some guys that might not necessarily be the best cap moves, but they could do it. Mata, Johnson, Simone, Cullen, I think, is 42. I think it's probably time to say thanks, but we got to move on. Let's see what Bluger can do in that role. And I think Jari can still bring some value to some teams, maybe a bad team. I don't think he's going to go to Boston and be backing up Rask anytime soon, but some bad teams might take a chance on him. I think some of those guys could be moved in some kind of package, free up some money to some teams that need something, and that could give them the ability to do some of the things that they need to do. But in terms of the future, I don't think they're going to ever be bad as long as they have particularly number 87 and Murray. But I don't really see them doing much differently than they did this year. They have some great stretches. They're going to have to retool this roster somehow. And this is going to be the toughest. This is going to be the toughest ride that Rutherford's had to do it. You know, with 32 franchises out there. So I'm not negative, but I'm not sure they're going anywhere. Things can change quick in the NHL, it seems, but they're going to have to make some moves up front. I think they started to do the things that we're talking about, but I'm not sure I'm sold yet that they're long-term answers. So,
you think they can do it, Chris?
Well, I think they're going to have to make some moves, as Gary said. The Kessel one's going to be interesting. And like you said, Dave, it's not like the cupboards are really well stocked in the farm system. So yeah. It's gonna take a little bit of doing. You know, the other thing I was thinking about, guys, is remember when sports teams for Boston were lovable losers, and it didn't mind them at all. You know, I love those old Red Sox teams with Yaz, Reggie Smith, Rico Petrocelli, Tony Conigliaro, all of those guys in the '75 World Series was a classic. Yep. I mean, I didn't even mind the Celtics being good, you know, with the Lakers in that rivalry. But damn it, I can't see another team from Boston winning. It's going to drive me nuts. You know, it stopped being fun after the first Red Sox championship. And then the Patriots, you know, it's not fun anymore, guys. It's just not fun. So please, St. Louis, step it up.
Oh, man.
Do it for us.
Thank God Boston College isn't a force anymore.
Oh, my God. They're so goddamn obnoxious now. It was always, oh, poor pitiful us. We're never going to win. Yeah. Even the TV show Lost had the Red Sox never winning a World Series being a plot point throughout the whole thing. I just can't take it anymore. Sorry, I took us off where we were going, but it had to say. It's
funny. Back here in the East, it's a different kind of obnoxious. It's kind of like the typical New England obnoxious. Like Philly's just obnoxious, period. New York too. Boston's not quite as offensive, but it's offensive in a different kind of way.
Yeah.
You get a little tired. I mean, even some of the comments Pierce made, I thought, like during some of the NBA playoffs. I mean, like, dude, you got to be kidding me. I mean, you only won one title. You know, I mean, seriously.
Well, they're the Pirates of New England, and they're going to potentially have the talent to go to a finals. I mean, it's an unprecedented run by them.
Yeah.
Getting back, we'll end the current Penn talk by just one stat that I just thought was phenomenal, that I kind of underscores what you say about Malkin. Is when he was out, the Penguins actually had a better record.
Yep.
Seemed like they relaxed, seemed like they were doing some of the things you guys talked about for them to succeed. I don't know what's up with the attitude, what's up between him and Sullivan, but to me, there's obviously something wrong on that end too. But
I mean, for all the talk about the both of them going back, Dave, a decade ago, and boy, I heard it every day. You know, we heard it every day here, even though they've had a far better run than Philadelphia's had during this era. But
yeah,
well, they're babies, they're whiners. I mean, Crosby's matured completely. Malkin hasn't. He still takes these stupid penalties, swinging sticks. He gets frustrated when he's getting checked tight. Whereas all Crosby does is put the mouthpiece in and go right back at it. And 10 years ago, people would have predicted the opposite probably.
Probably.
Malkin's from the Soviet Union. He'd be ice cold. This year, I thought he started out pretty good, first 20 games. But boy, you know, I mean, they don't have a lot of size, and penalty minutes don't mean as much as they used to. I mean, Evander Kane, I think, led the league in penalty minutes. He's a scorer.
Yeah.
But my point is Malkin should not be piling up 105 penalty minutes.
No.
Get it together, dude. I mean, you got to be on the ice. Okay,
Well,
and that second center position is a critical one in the end. I mean, one of the reasons Boston's run as far is because Krejci's so damn good.
well,
Boston, same thing with St. Louis.
he's had a head needs extracted out the assitis this year.
Maybe he likes the view, you know?
It could be.
I mean, he's talked about having a great legacy. He should take that to heart, and he should start playing a little differently.
Well, when you talk about legacy, though, thinking about all those Penguin teams, which one, David, do you think is the best?
To me, the best one was the 2016-17 team. They were the ones that had combined a full year and full playoff run of excellence. The others struggled in the regular season somewhat before they took on. But that team, to me, was the one that was dominant from the beginning to the end. And they had injuries. Malkin out 20 games, Sheary out 21, Russ 31, Hornquist 12, Daly 26, Mata 27, Letang 41. Those are some big injuries that they not only got over, but they excelled, and they won a back-to-back Stanley Cups in an era where it's damn near impossible. Fletch, what do you think it is the best?
Well, I would agree with you. The only one that I was going to say would be close would be actually the team that didn't win, and that was the last of the after the two consecutive
92-93.
92-93 when the Islanders knocked them out. I thought that team was just a juggernaut.
Yeah.
But, you know, listening to you count down all those games missed to injury, that was a phenomenal team. And the other thing about it, one of the things we've been blessed with, guys, is they've been fun to watch. They play exciting hockey. It's not the type of grab and clog up the middle hockey. Even in the playoffs, they were run and gun. It was fun hockey to watch. I mean, we probably took this era for granted, I think, a little bit. I mean, you know, we got 3 cups out of this latest incarnation. Not bad. I mean, there was a time when I thought we might get one and that would be it. Yeah. I didn't, especially the last cup. That one completely. I didn't see that one coming at all.
No, that's phenomenal. Gary, you got your thoughts?
I'm with you. I mean, I think in terms of top 6 forwards, goaltender, maybe even top pair defenseman, and in terms of dominance in the season towards the end was that 92-93 Penguin team.
Right.
Yeah. And nobody thinks about them because of that Islander upset. That's the one we wrote about in the book, all of us, or, you know, the book we did on the 21, you know, the Volek goal. You know, they didn't play very disciplined in that series, and Lemieux was a little compromised with his back problems. But I think in the era that nobody has won a back-to-back. And if you think about these last 12 years, you got Detroit 2, Pittsburgh 3, Chicago 3, Los Angeles 2, and potentially Boston 2. 31 franchises and 5 winners. To win it back-to-back in that is amazing, even if it's an era of dominance or if it's an era of parity, which it's been.
Right.
So, the 90, Patrick did not have to manage. The league got itself in trouble because Patrick did not have to manage a salary cap and all that stuff. The Penguins have been pretty good before they won those cups, too. They were still drafting very low guys in the 20s. They were still winning. So, and winning consistently. So when you think about it, I'd have to say they were the best team. People in Pittsburgh might be horrified at that. It's not you. But I think that second Penguins team in particular was the best.
So, well, good. Good. I think, a lot of good hockey talk here. Lyles, remarkably, they went out to check him for injury. He is staying in, fortunately, but wow, that would be just a kick in the crotch, so to speak, if he goes. But
is Dietrich coming up?
We're going to go to your big moment first of the week.
Which one?
Okay, so we did find out. Move over, Pudge Heffelfinger. The first actual paid professional hockey player was in Pittsburgh. He's a guy by the name of Arthur Sixsmith. It was in 1901. The Pennsylvania Hockey League started there, the Western Pennsylvania Hockey League. They were the Pittsburgh Bankers.
Yes.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, seriously, think of guys, at that time, Pittsburgh was like Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
All the technology that was coming out of there, plus the money. So these wealthy guys got together. They decided they wanted to do this hockey team. They actually were paying some of these players to work at the banks to get them to come down here to play hockey. And much like with college football at the time, professional hockey was really considered inferior because it wasn't pure. It took a long time before the National Football League caught on because the ideal was the college game.
Right.
So here the Pittsburgh Bankers in 1901. At the time, remember, Pittsburgh's the 10th largest city in the country at that time. So there's a lot of wealth here. There's a good-sized population. And they lured those skilled Canadian hockey players to come down, but there was a bit of a backlash. The teams in Canada were threatening to blackball these guys for playing this professional game. So the league actually hung around to 1904. Then it folded. They put it together with another league. It was called the International Professional Hockey League, even though all the teams were from the United States. So I don't know how that was international, but the WPHL came back in 1907. It lasted only a year. But, the article that we were reading about this, they really described it like slapshot and old-time hockey. And they would talk about games where the players had to fight to get off the ice. I mean, they literally had to drop the gloves and get off that way. But that seed of hockey was planted, and it grew in Pittsburgh. The Yellow Jackets, the Pirates, the Hornets, and eventually the Penguins. But for Sixsmith, the story doesn't have a great ending, real happy one. He amassed this great wealth, about $10 million in that time. Shitload of money. Yeah. But he lost it all during the stock market crash. Died in, I think, 1969. He's actually buried here in Pittsburgh in Homewood Cemetery.
Wow.
And that, my friends, is my moment of the week.
Jeez.
That was good. That was good. Oh, man. So, Gary, we have our boxing moments of the week. I want to hear some good combat talk here.
It was an interesting weekend. The most interesting thing that happened on the weekend, Dave and Chris, was the fact that I don't know if you caught it on ESPN, but Jamel Herring was actually a U.S. Marine for 9 years, and he learned to box in the Marines.
Yeah,
and he's a pretty good fighter. Not the most exciting guy, not a big puncher, but he gets a chance to fight, being a veteran over Memorial Day weekend against Masayuki Ito, who's a Japanese fighter, 130 pounds. Ito had a very good win last year and surprised everybody by winning one of the major titles. I think it was the IBF. Well, lo and behold, over Memorial Day weekend, guys didn't catch it. You can probably get it on demand. Herring boxed beautifully over 12 rounds. He took the title. He's 32 years old. It's a junior.
Wow.
So it was a nice story, you know. So, I mean, that was probably the biggest thing that happened over the weekend. Devin Haney's a very good prospect. He signed up with the Zone like everybody has, and probably we all will too soon. He fought a good fighter by the name of Moran on Saturday night, knocked him out in the 7th round. Haney's got good skills, and he's got a big personality. He's kind of a loud, I'm the greatest ever kind of guy. And there's a lot of guys at that weight now, that 140 to 147. So those are probably the biggest things that happen. I mean, the biggest news coming up is Anthony Joshua, the British heavyweight's going to fight in New York. He went over to see Canelo Alvarez fight there, and he's promoted by Eddie Hearn, who co-promotes Alvarez with Oscar De La Hoya. Joshua was amazing.
So, British fighter, you know he's a bleeder, Gary.
Joshua, he's got a glass chin. That's the thing that concerns me the most is people aren't talking about this because he's a big guy, he's well-spoken, body beautiful, Olympic guy. I don't think he won a gold medal, but I think he fought for one. But he's been rocked a couple times. Now, I don't think this weekend it's going to happen, but I think boxing's perverse the other way. I have a feeling Andy Ruiz, who has one of the worst bodies you're ever going to see if you watch it for a heavyweight, but he can really box. A big
never see me take my shirt off.
I mean, wait till you see Andy Ruiz is all I'll say. Okay?
Wait a minute.
Right? You probably looked like Charles Atlas. We all do compared to Andy Ruiz. But he can box like hell. And I have a feeling he's going to make Joshua look bad for a little while. I think Joshua eventually stop him. I think he'll stop him late. But I think Ruiz is going to make him look bad. And interestingly, I hope he does. Because if he does, it raises the bar for these three guys who are pretty damn entertaining heavyweights in Tyson Fury, also from the UK, as well as this guy Wilder, a big mouth, but Deontay Wilder from the US. All three of those guys could have some compelling fights, but for the various reasons we all talk about all the time, I'm not going to belabor it, they're not getting in there with each other. They all sign with different networks and everything else. If Joshua looks really bad, makes him look a little vulnerable, money goes down, all of a sudden, strange things happen. So kind of hope Ruiz gives him a little bit of trouble for a while.
What do you think causes the clotting issues in British people?
Too much. What do they call that? What do they call it over there? Too much of that beer they drink in the pubs, I guess. I don't know, but it is funny though. It's true. I'll go back all the way to Henry Cooper.
Oh, they get welts and they bleed. That's their defense.
Henry Cooper could have been one of the great bleeders of all time.
Him and Chuck Wepner.
Oh, the Wepner.
Wepner was a bleeder. Absolutely.
Very own bleeder. So nothing major in MMA, Dave. The UFC starts back up again.
You have the glove.
What's that?
You have the glove as you talk about.
I don't have. One of my moments of the week, if I can add one more, does pertain to Toronto, but I'm not as bitter as I was last week because there's a lot of people who agree with me about my points last week.
Hey, I got to tell you, Gary, we're lining up behind you left and right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people with me.
Here.
So I started something. So
you did.
Let's hope it gets us more hits and attention. That's one of the moments of the week, though.
Accept your invitation to go in the ring, though. That's what we really want to know.
I think I'm a little bigger than him. I might be able to hang in there for about 2 minutes.
I think you take him.
Yeah, I'm a little bigger than him.
I think he's soft.
I would agree.
He won't have a 6'7" Toronto forward like Leonard Witham when he's in there. But I mean, two guys who fought John Jones, who's probably the best. John Jones and Daniel Cormier are the best MMA fighters in the UFC. Two guys are fighting this weekend, Alexander Gustafsson and Anthony Smith. They're both entertaining fighters, all action guys. They both lost to Jones. That's on Saturday on ESPN from Stockholm, Sweden, where Gustafsson's from. So it's interesting what White is doing from a business standpoint. I'll just leave this in here for 1 second. He's figured out all the things boxing cannot. You know, boxing does keep Anthony Joshua in Britain because he can sell 90,000 tickets in a soccer stadium. They got to be forced to bring him to New York. White does the opposite. Now, he's in total control. He does have 15 promoters with dueling interests. But get a popular fighter, he puts a card there. Get another fighter that does well, he puts a card there. I mean, he's doing all the things to make his sport expand more internationally that boxing can't quite figure out still. Now, of course, he's in total control, and that's a big factor.
Well,
It's still interesting, though. It's still a longer-term view, though, than boxing ever seems to see. I think one of my last moments, the one other moment, Dave, not a combat one, I think the Toronto victory is one of the moments of the week.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, NBA took a lot of criticism for going there. It took a while to get going. But boy, Toronto is the New York of Canada, but there's clearly a backing now. Now we'll see if it stays, if Leonard leaves or whatever, and they all of a sudden go to 30 and 52. But a lot of passion about it, a lot of interest about it, and I'm stunned at how they came back and won that series. I don't know about you guys. I don't watch as much basketball as you guys, but I'm stunned at how easy it became once they started rolling. So
they get down by 15 and they go on a 27-3 roll late third into the fourth. It was phenomenal. Do you think the Canadian NHL teams are going to learn from this so they can go to a finals too?
And how funny is that? Toronto came in the league, what, in the early 90s in basketball?
Yep.
They were one of the original NBA teams, I think, but they came in, the new version came in, early 90s?
Mid-90s.
Yeah. And here you got the Leafs, the so-called New York Yankees of Canada, and they can't get back for 52 years.
Yeah.
So it is kind of ironic. So it is kind of an interesting twist of fate, isn't it? So.
Oh, it is. It is. It is. But, well, my big thing of the week, we lost two legends. We lost Bart Starr, who taught you how to win a Super Bowl necessarily. Exactly. And he didn't do it by throwing for 500 yards. Nope. He led his team. He was a great leader. I came across this thing on Sports Illustrated today where he responds to a fan's criticism when he was coaching. I think it was the mid-90s he was coaching, either the 80s or 90s.
Yeah.
Somebody calls or writes him and, goes nuts on him. Bart writes him back, "We are sorry to lose you as a fan, of course. But what is sadder is the example you are setting for your own sons. I hope you will redirect their young minds in the future. You will include tolerance so that when you occasionally or unintentionally disappoint them, they will not lose their faith in you like you have in us." I think that is one of the classic responses.
That sums it up, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yankers.
Yeah.
But we also lost one of the favorite baseball players, I think, of all of us, Bill Buckner. Buckner was a phenomenal player, and of course known for his error in Game 6 of the '86 series, which if they were playing St. Louis or Chicago or somebody who's not New York, it would probably not be mentioned anywhere near as much as it did. What was starting to irritate me as these comments were coming in was every news source coming out criticizing fans. You need to remember him not for just one thing, but for his career. These are the same people that every time they mentioned Bill Buckner would play the replay of him making the air.
Yep.
So to me, this was one of the more bullshit things. You're the reason that he is remembered like that. Yeah, there's probably a lot of Boston fans that are irrational. Not a ton of them, not by anywhere near a high majority of them, but there are some that are irrational, probably just like people that when they hear the name Stan Belinda or Jose Lean in Pittsburgh, they get irrational. But I was getting sick of the media trying to remind us that he had a career and it wasn't one thing. So shove it up your ass, okay? Next time you do something like that, don't wait till he dies. Don't wait till he dies to try to make a senseless case for him for the Hall of Fame, which some have done. He's not a Hall of Famer. He's a very good player, but not a Hall of Famer. But unfortunately, this is what, when you're seen by mass millions, these are the things you're going to be remembered by. Steve Blass had a career worthy of making him a top 50 Pirate of all time, in my opinion. What do you think about when you see his name? Blass disease.
Can't find a plate.
Yeah. It doesn't mean he was a bad player. He was a great player. That's what happened. Buckner made that error in front of tens and hundreds of millions of people. He also made, if I recall, in '74, one of the most boneheaded base running plays. Didn't cost him the series, but
NCAA's league. Yeah,
it was bad base running. But you know what? It's on the media for having people remember that, because that's what you do. He handled it with class. He was a class individual, tragic death. Fletch, you were posting things about the Curb episode where he caught the baby, which was one of the great episodes of all time.
I've forgotten about that.
But I was just getting sick and tired of almost every single media mention was almost chastising fans for not remembering him like that. Not remembering him for one thing. It was really pissing me off towards the end. It's okay to remember him for that error, especially if you're not a devout baseball fan, because that's pretty much all you know. Devout baseball fans will understand the greatness of Bill Buckner, will understand the class that he had after that. And yeah, there were a ton of irrational people. So be it. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it.
Well, Dave, let me add this. And I love, and I'm going to be sarcastic, not bitter. I love pardon the interruption.
Yeah.
I hate it. Okay?
Yeah.
Can't stand either one of them.
Yeah.
I remember a couple of years ago they were talking about this. I think it was when Boston went to the World Series a couple of years ago. I think it was last year. I think it was maybe a couple of years ago where they almost went to the World Series. We can't forget that McNamara is the one that really fell asleep. I think he put Stapleton in at first base something like 29 times that year when they had a lead for Buckner. Buckner had, by that point, Buckner could hardly move at all.
Yeah, no wheels.
And stuff that he had. He put Stapleton in. McNamara completely fell asleep with a 2-run lead.
Well, his explanation was, and it to me, this is where today's, making moves sabermetrically would have helped him there. He wanted Buckner in the game when they won the series, and that was irresponsible. I agree.
Yeah, I think he was covering his own CYA.
Well, whatever he was doing,
you're right. He may have said that, but I think he was CYA.
He probably was. It was a dumb move. I mean, you put it.
To your point that you're making is my point. Is even so-called, we'll call them sports journalists.
Yeah.
You got to talk about that fact. Now, Buckner still made the misplay, completely missed it like a midget leaguer, but that's never brought up. Yeah. There's a whole series of things that led up to the circumstance.
Oh, yeah.
It's never just one play, ever, any sport.
Right.
Yeah.
So some of that never gets talked about. Now you're right, though. Now we're going to make Buckner a hero because he happened to have the unfortunate early onset of Alzheimer's disease. He's only 69 years of – hell, I'm almost there.
Yeah.
But, now he becomes a sympathetic figure.
Just so you know.
Well, I'm on the way to it, as you probably can tell from these video casts that we're doing. But in all seriousness, though, now he's a hero. This is the same media that couldn't bring up anything. Couldn't bring up his 2,700 hits. Couldn't bring up his batting title. Couldn't bring up – I think he won 3 different doubles titles, if I recall.
Yeah, he was a great player. He wasn't a Hall of Famer. He was a great player.
Yep.
But yeah, he's going to be known for that era. So be it. As I said, if you're a devout enough baseball fan, you're going to know. You're going to know what he was. And it's important to point out the class of which he led his life, which was very much so. But on the other end, that's why we know Fred Merkle. Other than that, if that game is not in a New York situation, you probably don't know who Fred Merkle is. It's just the unfortunate part of it.
Or do we get to associate the word boner with him either?
Well, when I think the word boner, and I'm not talking about juicing like Larry David had at the Hall of Fame. Okay, but I do think of Fred Merkle first.
Yeah.
Well, that explains some things also.
Yeah, I probably do too anymore. That's probably true. But it's interesting. Those guys had a similar situation.
Yeah.
Now, Merkle kind of faded away a little bit after that, like after his career was over. He was with the Giants, I think, 3 or 4 more years after that. McGraw kept defending him. Then I think he went to, maybe, was it Brooklyn and maybe one other place. Then he moved to Florida. But every time the media apparently talked to him after that, for a long time, he was willing to answer all the questions and deal. That's fairly similar to Buckner, ironically.
Oh, yeah. That's what he was known for. He's probably the only man in the history of the game that has the word boner in his obituary.
It's probably true. It's probably true.
Oh, wait till I'm dead,
Well,
that's true, too.
I hope Blanco doesn't include it in there. Lack of A. I hope Sergeant Stubby isn't.
We'll move on, fellas.
But anyways, I mean, it certainly two leaders. Bart Starr, probably one of the most underrated, great quarterbacks of all time. And as we've talked earlier in the podcast, not today, but in earlier podcasts, the difference between quarterbacks where it gets lost, the great quarterbacks of yesteryear without the Mel Blount rules in effect.
Right.
Versus now. Starr always has to be in the conversation of great quarterbacks before the game.
Well, the other thing, too, is that I still think he has like the best passer rating in the postseason.
Yes.
Of any quarterback. And the other thing, maybe the most telling thing about him, he was the only one on that team who would consistently stand up to Lombardi and tell him, no, coach, you're wrong, and Lombardi would back down. That is respect.
You earned that. Absolutely earned that. And to play for two of the great coaches of all time, Bear Bryant and
right.
That had to, I wish he would have been more open. He seemed like a very private person. I wish he would have been more open because those stories just had to be priceless.
I mean, he let the big, Horning kind of a look at me guy.
Yeah.
Not Taylor so much.
No, Taylor held out. I mean, he had his
right
thing too. I mean, and even in that game, one of the championship games against the Cowboys, one of the Cowboy defenders just crushed Boyd Dowler 3 yards into the end zone after scoring a touchdown. Made him miss the first Super Bowl, making Max McGee the hero of that Super Bowl. But anyway, Jim Taylor was about to erupt, and he was going to go after that guy. But Bart Starr got in his way, walked him all the way to the sideline. You see this great moment in NFL films where you see the entire Green Bay sidelines going, way to go, Bart, way to go, Bart. I mean, this guy was an on-the-field leader.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the great leaders of all time. I mean,
Staubach was a cocky guy, and a lot of people didn't like him because the Cowboys were hateable. But both of those guys kind of had a similar type of thing. It's some big personalities around them.
Right.
They seem to be able to lead them, keep them under control, and really lead the team.
Right.
And both of those guys. But yeah, I mean, in Lombardi's book, it's funny. His points about Starr are pretty amazing. Like, he would listen to him versus some other guys, and kind of felt he was better prepared even than he was sometimes, things like that. That's pretty high praise. It's a pretty high praise. So
absolutely. So, certainly we lost two giants. Fletch, what's your prediction of the week?
Well, guys, it is the NBA Finals, and, I've already apologized to Mr. Leonard, but, the fact that as we were talking about before, that Toronto's even in this final, to me, is amazing. They're down 2 games to Milwaukee. Milwaukee, the best record in the league. At the time, I think they were, 10-1, 10-2 in the playoffs at that point, and they just pushed right through them. So now we have the upstarts versus the dynasty. We haven't seen a team appear in so many consecutive finals since the great Celtic teams, really. And, a lot of people aren't giving Toronto much of a chance. I did apologize to Kawhi Leonard for overlooking his talent. I think this series will be more competitive than we thought. Toronto matched up well against the Warriors in the regular season. I believe they won both matchups.
They did.
And, Durant and Cousins, they're going to be out for at least one game, so they're going to be a little shorthanded. So I'm going to call this a more competitive series than it looks on paper. I think it goes 6. I still think the Warriors prevail, but I think that the Raptors are going to represent themselves and their fans well, including Drake, who Gary is going to he's going to open a can of whoop-ass on Drake. And
I noticed the wet spot in front of his pants at the last game, and I think it was in fear.
I saw one banner in the crowd that said, "Gary's coming."
Yeah,
that's it. Let's hold up a sign when he's watching this.
Is that a famous Three Dog Night song?
It is. Well, nice Three Dog Night reference. Very good.
Yeah, I thought you'd appreciate that.
Get an Argent reference in there.
You guys are so much more well-rounded than me. I'm lucky to be with you both.
Well, hold your head up, Gary. There's your Argent reference.
There you go. All right. Gary, your prediction.
Yeah, it's funny. Fletch stole my thunder, but I'm going to second his opinion. I think Toronto plays pretty damn good defense, and I'll tell you, they really shut down Kemper. It looked like a grade school thing with them lining up on that, foul line. But I could see them slowing the Warriors down a little bit here, and I think, even if Durant does play a little bit, he's not going to be 100%. And Cousins, I don't know. I mean, he's erratic to me. You don't know what you're going to get, but I think the Warriors will win. But I think I'm with Fletch on that one. I think it's going to be a very competitive series, much more competitive than the media's given it credit for. And I'm going to go back to one thing, kind of a 1B like I always do in the hockey. I think you guys have figured this out already. I think St. Louis will. I think Boston will win this series, but I think St. Louis will make it competitive at times. So I think that's going to go. I think that's going to be a little bit more competitive than the first game showed as well. I could see the Bruins winning it in 6 games. I think St. Louis will win a couple games though. So,
can I add one other thing too that I should have predicted this 5 minutes ago that Marte would misplay 2 balls in the outfield in 1 inning.
This is getting a little frightening in there.
Whoa!
I feel like I'm watching an old Bugs Bunny cartoon. And another homer.
Gotta love Reynolds and Bell though, man. Watching them yesterday on the Plus, when I finally had a chance. Boy, I mean, gotta like Reynolds, man. I mean, like what I see. So.
Yeah.
You wouldn't like what you'd be seeing right now, Gary, if you had this on TV. Let me tell you.
Thank God you're not seeing it, buddy.
What's he doing? He made a mistake too?
Yeah.
Okay.
They showed up today. That was their mistake.
Yeah. Dietrich has 2 home runs. But,
yeah.
He's still a dick. But
he seems to run. Yeah, he seems to really rub.
What would Bob Gibson, Dave? What would Bob Gibson or Don Drysdale do to Dietrich?
The ball go in one ear and come out the other.
Yes. So I think they should have just drilled him the first time he was up today.
Yeah. Yeah, but
send the message, boys.
But that would be, let the boys have fun, which is one of the more bullshit ad campaigns I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. But
he's so good. The Miami Marlins let him go. So, right. I mean, somebody should remind him of that. That's probably what I'd remind him when he came to first base.
Well, he looks like Ted Williams today.
He does.
He's having a good year, no question, but hard to like, man.
What you got, Big Daddy?
Well, you know where I'm going to go today, with only a few days left before.
Oh yes, June 1.
Oh, we know.
But we'll talk about this weekend. The whole relegation from the British soccer leads a whole nother level of excitement, of playoff excitement. Aston Villa took on Derby County for the third place, in essence, in the level right below the Premier League, the Championship League. And they beat Aston Villa, who great historical power in British soccer, who fell on hard times, finally got their way back to the Premier League. And here's one of the great stats. I'll pull this up here just so I have it exactly. If you win a Super Bowl, it's worth $6.25 million to the team. NBA championship, $3.3 million. World Series, $30.4 million. Stanley Cup final, $4.4 million. To finish in third place of what in essence is AAA in the Premier League, worth $215 million to Aston Villa.
That's the thing about that.
That's the TV money and the extra money they get by moving up to the Premier League. Just phenomenal. Just blows me away. It just a whole.
I'm stunned.
I would never like to see that here, especially in baseball where we'd be relegated every year.
Yeah, it would make things far worse.
But yeah, that just blew my mind when I saw that stat. But that being said, the greatest competition in soccer in the world is the Champions League, the European final, which will mean $30 million to either Tottenham or Liverpool by winning that. I mean, it dwarfs any championship in the world.
It's amazing.
So it's the first time in ages that two English teams have faced each other in this. An improbable run as Liverpool was behind 3-0, and as was Tottenham. Both coming on with great second halves to remarkably get into this final. Harry Kane, the great forward from Tottenham, who's been out for quite a while this year, is that he's healthy and ready to come back. But it doesn't matter. You know what? You could put a 26-year-old Pele on Tottenham's team. Remember Pele? Remember him there?
I do remember him, yes. He's a Cosmos.
Yeah, exactly. You could put him out there. It wouldn't matter. It's going to be a thorough ass-kicking this Saturday afternoon.
And what time do they play, Dave? I'm curious. You got me curious.
At 3:30. It's on TNT.
Okay.
Bleacher Report has the rights to it, so they put it on TNT. They have a deal with them.
Okay.
It'll be probably kickoff is at 4, pregame at 3:30. But if you watch it, just the electricity of what you see is going to be incredible.
I'm sure.
It's in Madrid. Spanish teams have just dominated the last 4 or 5 years. So they finally get the final, and no Spanish teams.
No Spanish team.
Screw you, Spain. Okay? Screw you, Spain. I hate those bastards.
That's an irony, too.
Team I like. Okay? None. All right? You better not like a Spanish team, Fletcher.
Not when the finger's out, man.
Okay.
Backing down.
I certainly won't.
I wish I could make it go into your box. It kind of hides in there. All right. But I think, in all seriousness, they have the best goaltender in the world, Liverpool. They definitely have the best offensive output in the world. Firmino, who was a part that was missing the last couple of days, is just going to be back, and he just electrifies a front with Mo Salah, who 2 years in a row has led Europe in goals, or led England in goals. And I just think this team is so pissed that it lost the Premier League, losing one game, but because they tied so many, and the difference there is you get 3 points for a win instead of 2. So had it been like the NHL, they run away with the title.
Yeah.
But I think this is not going to be a team that's going to say, hey, we beat up Tottenham, we're going to do it again. This is a team that's pissed. I think they're going to take it out there. They're going to play their max, use the inspiration they had at the end of the Champions League, and I think a 3-1 game. I'm going to say a 3-1 game. A lot of tears coming out there, okay? And you guys are going to watch it, all right?
All right, you got me interested.
Man, see? Watch it. Watch how my finger just disappeared. Okay, what happened to it? Oh, there it is. All right.
Oh.
It's down.
Magic.
But that's my prediction, boys. I'm predicting next week we're going to come in here. We're going to hear a little music first. We're going to start out with music, or should we finish that way? I think we start out.
Well, I think you should start with it. If your prediction, I think you should start with it.
Yeah.
Do we have to sing?
I'd like you to join Fletch with the song.
Okay.
Remember, walk alone, boys.
All right.
I'll send you both out the lyrics. We can all
Yes,
three.
you'll have to send me the lyrics so I can practice.
Okay.
Watch the Jerry and the Pacemakers version of it, because that's the real version of it.
Jerry and the Pacemakers.
Not
Okay.
the Jerry Lewis version.
No.
I remember that pissed me off. You know, I'm there. I'm singing after a fairly nice victory last year in the Champions League on their way to the final. And Viv looks at me. Why are you singing Jerry Lewis's song? And I looked at her and said, what the hell are you talking about? This isn't Jerry Lewis's song. She goes, listen to it. And I'm listening to it. Then she plays me a video of a Labor Day telethon.
Ah,
And it just, how the hell am I getting goosebumps singing a friggin' Jerry Lewis video?
Well, Jerry Marsden, the lead singer of Jerry and the Pacemakers, was from Liverpool. So.
oh. There you go. That's karma right there.
Yeah.
That's karma.
All right. I didn't want to,
I have one serious question for you, though, Dave, about this sport, which I know very little about.
Please.
Do layoffs matter in this like they do in – do they seem to affect the team if there's a long layoff, or is this something that's
you're always going to get a long layoff the same as both ends because they do something kind of neat. The last game of the season, they play every game at the same time.
I've seen that.
So yeah. you're gonna have a layoff regardless. I mean,
no matter what you do. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, Italy does it, and the Bundesliga in Germany, they play a week beyond, so there's still a long layoff, but not as. But in this situation,
I was just curious more than anything.
It's going to be. I mean, you're never going to have like a 4 or 5 day layoff. It's always going to be a couple weeks, even if you're in.
Yep. I've noticed that.
Yeah, but it's not as prevalent because they only play once a week anyway. It would be more comparison to an NFL first round game compared to a divisional.
Like a playoff football game, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's what I'm excited. I picked out my jersey. I picked out my hat. I don't want to wear them till then. You know, tradition dictates. I have my flag up. My Champions League pennant is up there. And, of course, Fletcher, as I've told you before, you will be coming out to see the raising of the Champions League pennant.
Do I have to sing that time too? Or is it just a one-time concert?
You can sing that. We can take it. We'll figure out a way here to get it on tape, so we can play it for our.
I would like to witness this as well. So,
okay. All right. It's a 5-hour drive. It's a 5-hour drive. It's going to take about 10 days to get this thing here because it has to come from England.
Okay.
So it's not like a Jimmy Toulouska outside with his bogus pennant, world championship pennant that he sells outside the stadium after you win the title. These are well manicured pennants that will be coming. But what are our shirts of the days, guys? Before we head off, Fletch, what's your shirt of the day?
I'm wearing my 71 Pirates Clemente edition.
All right, very good, a classic. You pipering it?
It's funny. I've got there's a ghost or something in this house. Okay, we're talking about the Penguins, so I figure I'm going to wear my classic Penguins light blue.
Yeah,
can't find it. Can't find it anywhere. So I went with the next best thing. We're talking about the basketball finals. So Vipers won. Would have loved to see that. I figured I'd have to substitute for it. Wish me luck though, because that Penguins jersey I've had forever, even before Crosby scored that outdoor goal in Buffalo. And I can't find it. It's got me.
You think maybe she took it to make you a blanket out of your T-shirts?
I don't know. Maybe she got mad and threw it out. I don't know.
I think she ripped the number off and put Fleury's number on it.
Well, that would certainly be. Boy, I made the mistake. One funny thing before we.
Oh, you didn't bring up Fleury to her, did you?
I brought up Murray and I said how well he was playing in the World Championships, and she's like, "Yeah, well, that's good. Let's see what he does next season." So.
Oh.
It's a legitimate distaste.
In the first round, like her lover boy did this year.
Yeah, he fell apart after game 2, didn't he? So,
yeah.
Right. Yeah. People don't talk. They talk about that bad call with Pavelski in the 5-minute major. He also gave up 3 goals he didn't even react to. So that's true, Dave. You're right on. So
well, hopefully one day when Pavelski dies, we won't be talking about his penalty.
NHL didn't have a good spring.
He's more than just one penalty. The ESPN will claim.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
All right, gentlemen.
All right.
Have a lovely evening, and I look forward to hearing your rendition when next we meet.
Yes.
Liverpool rocks!
We all look forward to it. So.
All right.
There's also the Jackie DeShannon version. Don't forget that one. Also very good.
You pick it out. You're responsible for background music next week.
All right.
All right.
Well, I'll be posting a video to our site.
Okay.
There you go. That will get us a hit.
Yeah. Not from Pop.
No, apparently not. Well, maybe it will. The other one.
Hold on. I'll leave you with this. Laugh. All right.
Oh.
Have a
All
good
right,
night.
Flacco.